Today we'll be talking about our only function as defined by A Course in Miracles. So the short answer as to what our only function is in A Course in Miracles is forgiveness, is healing, is accepting the atonement principle, which is that we have never left God's oneness and therefore we aren't the shameful, guilty creature that we think we are, from which we derive all our fears, all our depression, all our angst. Now, as you can see, I've got a lot written on the board, so we're not going to stop there. We're going to explore a bit about the life and philosophy of a person called Ayn Rand, who you might be familiar with. She wrote this book, The Fountainhead, which is very divisive. Right-wing people love it, left-wing people despise it, and there's not many who read it and feel somewhere in between. But what I can say was Ayn Rand was a very intelligent person and she was a very good writer, and she was thoughtful in what she wrote and in developing a philosophy. Nobody can do that without spending a lot of time and effort. But she also said some things that would offend many people, many cultures, many cultural practices. We're not getting into all of that today, and it's not this video isn't about taking a side, right wing, left wing, or anything like that. It's about forgiveness. And it's about using Ayn Rand's life and philosophy as a way of exploring this idea about what our only function is. And in doing so, we'll end up back where we began, with a discussion of forgiveness and the Course's idea of what our only function is. So let's start with what Ayn Rand felt our function is. Well, first of all, let's see what she felt it wasn't. It wasn't a religious function. She really despised religion and the idea that we are here to serve God and others. She didn't like that idea at all. Nor did she like the idea of collectivism. So it wasn't just religion, a religious idea that upset her. It was the secular idea of collectivism, where instead of serving God, we're here to serve the state. So that was communism in particular that she was talking about. So in both these answers, in situations, what she doesn't like is what she says, you are called to serve any need but your own. So the idea of self-sacrifice in these two positions is what she really didn't like. So she felt that religion and collectivism, or the collectivism of things like communism, she felt that it was demeaning to the individual, demeaning to the dignity of the individual. And so her idea was, you exist for yourself. You don't exist for God. You don't exist for the state. You don't exist for other people. You exist for yourself. And so she was a screenwriter. She started in Russia. That was where she was born and raised. And we'll get more into her childhood and earliest beginnings later on in this video. But she moved to America, where she became a screenwriter, and she also wrote novels, one of them again being The Fountainhead, which was made into a movie with Gary Cooper, I think, as the head guy, the architect, Howard Rourke, who is the main guy in this book. Yeah, Gary Cooper, I think, played the main character. Correct me if I'm wrong. So one of the things about Ayn Rand, which I think makes her so contentious, is that she's very unapologetic and straightforward about her thoughts. And so she uses the term man worship for her philosophy. I mean, that's pretty brazen in itself to say, my philosophy is about man worship, not God worship, not state worship, but man worship. And by that she also means the worship of the individual and the individual's freedom. And here's a little bit of what she wrote in the introduction to The Fountainhead, which will help give you an idea of her beliefs and also what she was so upset about in terms of collectivism and religion. So here we go. The man worshippers, in my sense of the term, are those who see man's highest potential and strive to actualize it. The man haters are those who regard man as a helpless, depraved, contemptible creature and struggle never to let him discover otherwise. So here I think she's having a good go at religion. She was interested in Nietzsche, and he also had a go at religion for this reason. He felt that religion turned us into life deniers, that religion promoted the idea that people are contemptible creatures, we are sinners. So his father was Lutheran. He had that idea of sin, of the corruptible nature, from the Bible, Adam and Eve, all of that stuff. And Nietzsche rebelled against that when he went to university and discovered other philosophers. He felt that he'd been wasting his time by denying life, by denying what he saw as the best of human nature, which was to strive to be the greatest you could be. And his terms are similar to Ayn Rand's, but also very different on parts, but we're not going to get into that. Let's stick to our goal, which is to explore Ayn Rand and the whole issue of forgiveness. So reading a bit more specifically, the essential division between these two camps, the man-haters and the man-lovers, is those dedicated to the exaltation of man's self-esteem and the sacredness of his happiness on earth, not in heaven, and those determined not to allow either to become possible. So those determined not to allow him to be happy on earth and not to allow people to have self-esteem. So she felt that in these two positions up here, where you're called to self-sacrifice for the greater good or for a better life in the afterlife, well, she felt that diminishes the individual. So here she's going to talk a bit about her view, which is that we have an inalienable right, in her eyes, to follow our dreams, to do what we want to do, to not have to sacrifice our wants, our desires, our inclinations for the greater good. So she's not at all shy about promoting the idea of self-interest. She thinks if everybody works for self-interest and lets everybody else, gives them the freedom to work for their self-interest, leave them alone, don't try and tell them what to do, and they don't try and tell you what to do, then everybody would be able to become the best that they can be. And that is her idea of the ideal person, the heroic individual, is really but that idea of hers meant achievement in the world, so that you were financially successful, so that you could stand on your own 2 feet. Anyway, a little bit more from the Fountainhead introduction about that idea of the individual. This view of man has rarely been expressed in human history. Today it is virtually non-existent. Yet this is the view with which, in various degrees of longing, wistfulness, passion, and agonised confusion, the best of mankind's youth start out in life. It is not even a view for most of them, but a foggy, groping, undefined sense made of raw pain and incommunicable happiness. It is a sense of enormous expectation, the sense that one's life is important, that great achievements are within one's capacity, and that great things lie ahead. So this reminds me of in primary school, or elementary school if you're in the States, when the teacher would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everybody would have grand ideas about what they wanted to do when they grow up. It is not in the nature of man, nor in any living entity, to start out by giving up, by spitting in one's own face and damning existence. That requires a process of corruption. And a bit further down, but whatever their future, at the dawn of their lives, men seek a noble vision of man's nature and of life's potential. There are very few guideposts to find. The Fountainhead, her own novel, is one of them. This is one of the cardinal reasons of the Fountainhead's lasting appeal. It is a confirmation of the spirit of youth, proclaiming man's glory, showing how much is possible. It does not matter that only a few in each generation will grasp and achieve the full reality of man's proper stature, and that the rest will betray it. It is those few that move the world and give life its meaning, and it is those few that I have always sought to address. The rest are of no concern of mine. It is not me or the Fountainhead that they will portray. It is their own souls. So that was written by Ayn Rand in 1968. She's pretty harsh, or very harsh, about people who don't achieve a level of success in the world that enables them to stand on their own 2 feet financially. She doesn't like anything to do with social welfare, and she has a lot of courage in what she says because, of course, she got attacked a lot for it. She appeared many times on the Phil Donahue show, if you remember that, and he took her to task really well about some of her positions, and some of them are really, really offensive to different communities, different cultures. But she was steadfast in her belief that we owe nothing to anybody but ourselves. Our purpose here is to be the best that we can be, to establish the values we want to live by and to strive to fulfill them. And that is what she tried to portray in this book, The Fountainhead, with her lead character, Howard Roark, who is an architect. Now, Howard Roark is her idea of an ideal man. She wouldn't settle for anything other than an heroic individual. That's who she wanted to marry when she was a teenager. Nothing would do other than a hero, a heroic figure. And Howard Roark is her idea of the ideal person. And she's written The Fountainhead as a way of illuminating to her readers her idea of the ideal person and the social circumstances in which such a person can thrive. And she's adamant that those conditions are laissez-faire capitalism, which means not much government control, certainly not much government taxes, and absolutely no government welfare in her ideal laissez-faire capitalism. So the main thing, the big thing that happens in The Fountainhead is that Howard Roark is commissioned to design a housing project building, so for social housing to help people who are homeless. So he makes a clause in the contract that says that no one is allowed to adjust his designs, that his designs have to be left and as they are, and to be built, the building has to be built absolutely according to his instructions and his design. So he, in Ayn Rand's ideas, he is the ideal man because he has very high standards for his building. He has put his talent, he's given it his all to design this building according to his very high standards, and he's uncompromising about how those designs are to be worked with. They're to be worked to the letter. He's even put it in a contract. What happens is that along the way, the contractors or the people with all the power, they decide to have another architect come in and adjust the design a little bit to accommodate kind of conformity. Ayn Rand hates conformity. So in her book, Howard Roark is this brilliant, innovative architecture who always pushes up against the boundaries of conformity and the norm and the kind of standards in architecture that people are accustomed to. So when they change Roark's design to make it conform a little more to their tastes or to save some money, he gets angry. But he doesn't take it to the courts. He doesn't try to get some redress through traditional channels. What he does is he decides to blow the building up. And the rest of the novel is then a courtroom scene is a big part of the rest of the novel, where he decides to defend himself. He's such a heroic figure that he doesn't want a lawyer. He will defend himself. And he gives a big speech. It's a wonderful speech, actually. Gary Cooper, if there is indeed the actor, he does it very well, very dignified, and he has the gift of the gab. Ayn Rand has the gift of the gab, or the gift of persuasion. He makes a persuasive argument as to why he was entitled to destroy the building, even though it was going to provide housing for lots of homeless people. So here's some of Howard Roark's defence in the courtroom. Now you know why I dynamited Cortlandt. Cortlandt is the name of the housing project. I designed Cortlandt. I gave it to you. I destroyed it. I destroyed it because I did not choose to let it exist. It was a double monster, in form and implication. I had to blast both. The form was mutilated by two second-handers who assumed the right to improve upon that which they had not made and could not equal. They were permitted to do it by the general implication that the altruistic purpose of the building superseded all rights and that I had no claim to stand against it. The love of a man for the integrity of his work and his right to preserve it are now considered a vague, intangible, and an inessential. He goes on, and this is a bit later. I came here to say that I do not recognise anyone's right to 1 minute of my life. You exist for yourself, not for anybody or anything else. Nor to any part... All right, I'll read that first sentence again. I came here to say that I do not recognise anyone's right to 1 minute of my life, nor to any part of my energy, nor to any achievement of mine, no matter who makes the claim, how large their number, or how great their need. I wished to come here and say that I am a man who does not exist for others. It had to be said. The world is perishing from an orgy of self-sacrificing. I wish to come here and say that the integrity of a man's creative work is of greater importance than any charitable endeavour. Those of you who do not understand this are the men who are destroying the world. I wished to come here and state my terms. I do not care to exist on any others. I think you can get an idea of Howard Roark from that, and from that, an idea of Ayn Rand and her position. It is a very, very strong and extreme position that says, I exist for myself. The integrity of my work, how I wanted it to be done, is more important, gives me claim to it, not the welfare of others. So the welfare of others can be damned if it comes at the cost of my work remaining as I intended it to be. Now, this situation reminds me of the Sydney Opera House, and it was a beautiful design, and the architect actually made it different to how it has turned out. How it has turned out is wonderful, but the architect did originally have all sorts of different plans, but they were more costly, and eventually the powers that be decided to go with this modified version, much to the architect's sorrow, really, and frustration. And I can understand his frustration. However, we have the Opera House with its magnificent acoustics, and it's appreciated by a lot of people. If that architect had gone, no, if he had done a Howard Roark and just destroyed it, blown it up with all that public money invested in it, if he had had the kind of idea that Howard Roark had, he would have deprived the community of something that many people could enjoy. Ayn Rand would really take me to task for that, for saying that. She would say he owes them nothing. And it's interesting in Ayn Rand's novel that the jury finds Howard Roark not guilty of committing a crime. So he gets off, and then he gets commissioned by a friend of his who appreciates his work to do a design of a building and to have it done exactly to his specifications, and it's magnificent, yada, yada, yada. Now, the thing that strikes me with Ayn Rand's philosophy and with the plot in The Fountainhead is the thing that she really takes aim at is social welfare and social security. For example, why was it that of all the buildings Howard Roark in the novel had to build and then destroy and have a big battle with people about was housing for homeless people? Why did it have to be his existence for himself pitted against something provided for the community, for their health and welfare? Why did she choose that? She really does have an issue with the idea of helping others who aren't currently standing on their own 2 feet in terms of the world, in terms of finances. And to illustrate this, she, at the time after the bombing of the building and nearing to the court case, she says this: "It was a sensational scandal, and there was the usual noise and the usual lust of righteous anger, such as is proper to all lynchings. But there was a fierce personal quality in the indignation of every person who spoke about it." Quotes, "He's just an egomaniac, devoid of all moral sense." And then she goes through saying, said the, and different people. Said the society woman, and then this is the society woman. Says the novelist, then this is the novelist. But the one, and she does that to another couple of people, but the one that she really is vicious towards is the social worker. She hates the profession of social work. And this is what she says about the social worker. My apologies to any social workers watching. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Okay. He's just an egomaniac, devoid of all moral sense, said the social worker, who had found no aim in life and could generate no aim from within the sterility of his soul, but basked in virtue and held an unearned respect from all by grace of his fingers on the wounds of others. Wow, that is so harsh. And it's really interesting that in that passage he starts off with the righteous indignation and anger of the people saying how bad it was that Howard Rourke destroyed this building. Well, she employs quite a bit of righteous venom towards the social worker there. And of course, whenever there's that going on, there's a personal dragon, there's a personal shadow at play, because that is the source of that really emotional venom towards a particular profession, a particular target. So the source of all our very strong ideological positions is a wound, is something there that causes us to have a real venom towards the opposition. So the thing about life is that often we get the opportunity to reassess our strong stance on anything, our ideology, and our hatred of the other side or of other positions. And there's a real irony in Ayn Rand's life that occurred when she retired, and in 1974 she was diagnosed with cancer and she needed financial assistance and eventually applied for social security. So she had to interact with her previous enemy number one, a social worker. And her social worker just sounds so lovely. Her name was Eva Pryor, and I'm going to read a bit of what Eva had to say in an interview with her in 1998 about her interactions with Ayn Rand, and this is what she says. Rarely have I respected someone as much as I did Ayn Rand, she said. When asked about their philosophical disagreements, she replied, "My background was social work. That should tell you all you need to know about our differences." I had read enough to know that she despised government interference and that she felt that people should and could live independently. She was coming to a point in her life where she was going to receive the very thing she didn't like. For me to do my job, she had to recognise that there were exceptions to her theory. She had to see that there was such a thing as greed in this world. She could be totally wiped out by medical bills if she didn't watch it. Since she had worked her entire life and had paid into Social Security, she had a right to it. She didn't feel that an individual should take help. But finally, Rand accepted. Whether she agreed or not is not the issue, said the social worker. She saw the necessity for both her and her husband, Frank. So she did accept financial support through Social Security for herself and her husband as she went through the treatment. Now, what I like to suggest is that this kind of irony that happens in life is such a wonderful opportunity for healing. But it's only, or can only be used for healing if we recognise that, or if we have an open mind to perhaps we have been wrong in how we've looked at things, and then can come to some kind of understanding of why we have taken such an extreme position. It's like eating humble pie. It can be a very humbling experience, but it is the gateway to healing. And I'd like to read a little bit from the Song of Prayer pamphlet from the course, and it's in a section called The Ladder Ends. And this is what it has to say about true humility. True humility will come at last to grace the mind that thought it was alone and stood against the world. Humility brings peace because it does not claim that you must rule the world or that you must rule the universe, nor judge all things as you would have them be. All little gods it gladly lays aside, not in resentment, but in honesty and recognition that they do not serve. So all the little gods could be all the beliefs that we held on to protect us in some way. So a strict ideology, and being so emotionally invested in it, is a defense. It's a defense to something. And we're getting there with Ayn Rand. So she had a big opportunity to start reflecting a bit on her position and the strength of her position, and if it was stopping her from appreciating something about herself. But she didn't take this opportunity. What she did instead is she rationalised her position. She rationalised the fact that she was accepting social security. She philosophised about it, intellectualised about it, to create a position, an excuse, if you like, a defence for her accepting social security that fit with her ideology. So this is Rand's rationalisation of her taking social security when she objects strongly to there being any social security. She says that she views social security as legalised plunder. People are forced to give away some of their money in taxes that are then redistributed amongst the community for different things such as social security. Well, she regards that as theft because you're not voluntarily, if you're opposed to social security, you're not voluntarily giving over your money to contribute to it. The government takes it, and so she calls that legalised theft. But since you oppose such a thing, it is theft in her eyes, and so morally you are entitled to claim social security when you need it because it's restitution for what has been taken from you. But you have to, in order for it to be morally okay for you to accept social security, you have to still oppose social security. Okay, so if you oppose social security and you still oppose it even while you're getting it, then morally it's okay for you to receive it. Okay. But if you've given to social security all your life, happily, thinking it's okay to give this to the government, then it's not so much theft because you're voluntarily giving it over. And so then when you need to claim it, if you go to claim it, you don't have a right to it because you've given it voluntarily away. This is her reasoning. This is Rand's reasoning. And I'm not going to go into holes in the argument and what have you, but you can see, whether you've followed my discussion of Anne's reasoning or not, what you can see is there's a lot of mental gymnastics gone on to defend her position. She was not prepared to adjust her ideology at all. And in that respect, she really reminds me of Sigmund Freud, who was never prepared to reevaluate the sexual focus of his theory on the Oedipal complex and the focus on conflict with the father. He was never prepared to adjust that at all. Now, Freud's mother, Amalia, was a very dominating figure in his family, much more domineering than his father. Yet his Oedipal theory focuses on a fear of the father. And it had to be the father because in his theory, there's the sexual desire for the mother, hence the fear of the father, castigating or castrating the son because of those desires. So he had to keep it sexual because then he didn't have to go anywhere near the issue, a very real issue for him in his childhood, of the domineering nature of his mother. So he didn't have to go anywhere near any anger or resentment he had towards his mother. Now, Jung tried to dissuade him from that sexual focus and bring in the idea of attention, that we want the absolute attention of people. And other theorists tried to relate it to that as well. But he would not go there. It's like he wouldn't let a little crack in his theory because then perhaps he'd be open to, or the floodgates would be open, and he would be open to having to look at the domineering nature of his mother and how he felt about her. What I would like to suggest that one of Ayn Rand's resistances to looking at her ideology and reframing it or adjusting it at all was her resistance to looking at how it may have developed out of her own issues with her mother, which she didn't want to look at. She knew they were there from interviews, you know that they were there, but she didn't want to look at the connection between that and her ideological, intense ideological position against social welfare and people needing social welfare. You know, it's bad luck. They didn't earn the money, they didn't achieve great things like Howard Rourke. Bad luck. You need help, bad luck. So now I'm going to read from some notes that I took from an interview by Mike Wallace with Ayn Rand, and these are some details about her childhood. So she was the oldest of 3 daughters, and she was living in Russia. So that's where her family lived in the first quarter of the 20th century, and she experienced the Russian Revolution as well in her latter years. But let's get back to when she was a small child. Her father was a self-made man. He was self-employed, and she described him as being predominantly silent. Her mother, that was a painful subject, she said. She disliked her. She disliked her mother. They didn't get along. She said her mother was always saying that she was antisocial. She should play with more children. She didn't like the fact that she was quite self-contained. She was always nagging her. She disapproved of, this is Ayn Rand's words, she disapproved of me in every aspect except in her intellectual accomplishments. That she was quite proud of. She was quite proud to show her off. But she was very badly tempered. Her mum was very temperamental. And when she was, I guess, not in a good mood, she would say to her daughters, and particularly to Ayn, that she never wanted any children, that they were a burden, and she didn't want to have to look after them. Now she was burdened with these children that she never wanted. And Ayn said she would be like, well, you're telling us that, well, what can we do about it? She's in this position, and you never wanted us, you don't want to look after us, you disapprove of everything about me. What am I to do with this? Ayn said that she resented that her mother felt that way. And in regards to her family, she would just waited for the time to grow up and get out of there. And she said this, I had a very strong sense, very early, that anything that I liked had to be mine and not my mother's and not the family's. And her interest was focused on books and movies and the heroes within them. She was really attracted to the idea of a hero, the swashbuckling hero. She described an illustration that she remembers seeing in childhood, and it was of in some village streets, and there was a cart with a big iron cage with bars, and within the cage were a lot of people kind of cowering down. They were scared, but there was one man standing up, resilient, holding on to the bars, and he looked strong and courageous. And she said that when she was looking at this image, it was almost like a mystical experience for her, which I thought was interesting because she really doesn't like the idea of mysticism at all. But she had some experience that was like, wow. And that figure of the heroic individual standing up strong, apart from the crowd, really struck her. And I think that's what she's carrying forth with the idea of you exist for yourself. You exist for yourself outside of the family. That's what she wanted. That was her idea. Once she realized her mother didn't want her, that's what her mother said, in her ego. Egos can be awful. Her mother didn't want her. She was a burden on her mother. Her father was disinterested, silent. She needed to stand alone. She needed to stand apart from the family. And I see this as symbolic as the individual needs to stand apart from society, needs to stand apart from the government, needs to stand apart from God. Because God, ultimately, we're looking at this in terms of A Course in Miracles now and the mythology of the separation, God didn't give us the attention that we wanted. God cast us out of heaven. God rejected us. We're just a burden, you know. These are the kind of things that are behind our ideologies. There's a parent or a primary carer, and behind them is God. Now, the reason Ayn Rand, Sigmund Freud, many others don't want to address their ideology is, for a start, they don't want to be wrong. The ego never wants to be wrong, but also they don't want to face the pain and the beliefs associated with those early hurts. But the Course assures us that through the process of forgiveness, we'll never be met with more than we can handle. And the Course's process is not to take away these things that have become special relationships, but to transform them. So for Ayn Rand, or anybody kind of addicted to a staunch ideology, the forgiveness process doesn't rip that away from them. It helps transform their relationship to that ideology or that person, that thing, that project, and transform it so that it helps heal them. And yes, their ideas about their ideology will shift, their ideas about the project will shift, but it won't be felt as though they're being deprived of something. It won't be felt as if something's being stolen from them, like with Howard Rourke. They won't be so attached to the form of what they're doing and to any shifts that they have to make accordingly. In this, I'd like to read a passage from chapter 25, and this is from a section, number 6, called The Special Function. And this is what it has to say about really all roads leading to forgiveness, meaning all our specialness projects can lead to forgiveness if we're open to it. Okay, forgiveness is the only function meaningful in time. So not the grand projects, not all the things we want to do when we're growing up, our grand ideas about the future. Forgiveness is the only function meaningful in time. It is the means the Holy Spirit uses to translate specialness, the projects, the ideologies, from sin into salvation. A bit further on, the specialness he chose to hurt himself did God appoint to be the means for his salvation from the very instant that the choice was made. His special sin was made his special grace. His special hate became his special love. The Holy Spirit needs your special function. The special function is forgiveness, that his may be fulfilled. Think not you lack a special value here. You wanted it, and it is given you. So what it means by you wanted a special function, you wanted something just for yourself. And the thing is, the Holy Spirit says you can have a special function here just for yourself, and it is forgiveness. It is just for you, but it is just for everybody else as well. Your special function means that the particular classrooms for you. So forgiveness is your special function in terms of your forgiveness lessons are yours. Your forgiveness classrooms are yours, whether that be a particular profession, a particular relationship. In that respect, your forgiveness lessons are special. Ultimately, everybody has the same forgiveness lessons in content, in that we need to know that we didn't separate from God and we're not sinful and guilty. But in time, we all have special classrooms particular to ourselves through which we heal. So Ayn Rand's special function is to employ the process of forgiveness to her special classroom, her personal classroom, which was her relationship with her mother and her father. And in doing so, she's addressing the universal issue, the one that we all share with God. And that is how she could heal the pain associated with an identity as Ayn Rand, the burden on the authority. And she was very much supported in being able to use the opportunity of receiving social work to address that issue of being a burden, because her social worker was so respectful of her. They clicked and was so encouraging of her to accept the help that was available, and I imagine would have promoted the idea to Ayn that she was worthy of receiving this support, that she deserved it, that just by being who she was. And there is the line in the Course where it says, nothing you say, do or think is necessary to establish your worth. Your worth is established by God. That is very different to this idea of the ideal man becoming this accomplished person in the world by serving their self-interest and living up to their values of perfection, really. Perfection in a building, or perfection in a theory, or in any kind of design, or anything of the world. Anything in form. Form includes words, form includes theories. And in this, I'd like to leave off this video with a quote from Mother Teresa, which really challenges this whole idea of achievement in the world and the great expectations of what I'll do when I grow up. First, actually, before I say that Mother Teresa quote, I'm going to read this bit from the course in relation to these great expectations. No one who comes here but must still have hope, some lingering illusion or some dream that there is something outside of himself that will bring happiness and peace to him. Well, I think that kind of describes the optimism and far-reaching imagination that Ayn Rand was talking about, that children have when they're growing up, about what they'll be. You know, there's this huge optimism, I'll be this and I'll be that, and all this adventure, like the world is an adventure playground. What will I be? Well, I'm going to end with Mother Teresa's words, which, as we get older, we kind of realise that the world isn't all it's cracked up to be. And I think Mother Teresa's words really should be like a balm to all that idea of making something of your life, making something of yourself. Mother Teresa said, we cannot do great things in this world, but we can do small things with great love. And I just think that's a lovely, lovely thing to say. And yeah, we can't do great things in this world. There are no great things in this world. There are only great motivations. And if our motivation is healing and forgiveness, then we are on the right path. We are doing something worthwhile, truly worthwhile. Thank you for watching, and thanks for sticking with it. If you have managed to come to the end of this video, thanks for sticking with it, and I hope it was worthwhile for you. Bye.